What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Deep Dives, where we dive deep into issues of theology and culture. My name is Gavin. I'm a pastor here in Coral Springs, Florida, and I'm a basketball coach. This is now our 6th episode of this season, if you will, of Deep Dives. And what we've been doing is kind of taking each of the 10 commandments, really, and exploring some of the ethical and cultural implications of each. We're still getting into the first commandment. And so the implication we're looking at today is that of education and where it is that I should send my kids to school. Hopefully this video will be informative for you and helpful for you as you explore the ideas of education and some of the issues that surround it. If you like this video, go ahead and indicate that by hitting the like button, subscribe to our channel, share with a friend, and I hope you enjoy what we've got coming. So I've said a few times before that I really don't think it's wise to approach anything without purpose. One of my roles as a basketball coach is to get a team of 15 guys organized in such a way that we have a common goal. Now, the obvious goal is that we would win basketball games more often than we lose them, but there are millions of variations for how you can do that. What are we doing on offense? What are we doing on defense? The bottom line is that all 5 guys that are on the court at one time need to have the same purpose and same goal in mind, whether we're on offense or defense. Everybody focused on the same thing. And when we talk about education, I think sometimes there's a spectrum of purpose. What does it exist for? What are we trying to accomplish? And I think laying the groundwork for that is important before talking about what's the best option in terms of how to educate ourselves and educate our kids. I think one option for the purpose of education that people approach is maybe just evolutionary progress. So the idea is that we as human beings, we're a highly intellectual species. We're able to progress with all kinds of innovations and technology. And so as long as we continue to educate ourselves, it's going to be better for society as a whole. We could probably all agree that living in 2023 is a whole lot better than living in, say, 1023. We got central heating and air conditioning. We got comfortable clothes and really useful sneakers and great transportation to get far distances more efficiently. We got better medicine. It goes on and on and on. Those are all the products of education, right? And so we would say to continue to progress society, it's good for us to be educated. A second option for the purpose of education is really understanding your God, whatever God you worship, understanding that God and the morality that God or those gods have outlined for you. This would be Jewish education, Muslim education, Mormon education, Christian education to a degree. It's understanding the world in light of the God that you believe made it and the morality that accompanies that. A third option, I think, would be maybe a blend of the two. And this is probably where most people are. There aren't a lot of people that just have a hardcore secular philosophy. God does not exist. It's up to us. Let's continue to advance society. And there also aren't a lot of people that are sold out religiously, and this is what I must do to appease my God or conform to that morality. I think most people are kind of in the middle somewhere, right? Believe God exists and the way I behave is of some importance, but I'm also an important individual human agent myself, and I want to keep advancing society. And so I think solidifying, well, what's the purpose of education? How do we do this? That's important to establish those questions. Deuteronomy chapter 6 in the Bible says that we are to teach our children diligently and faithfully, right? To help them learn and understand that this is a command of God and an ordinance from him for how we are to raise families in this society. I think it still applies even in the New Testament as Jesus comes onto the scene. We see him exemplify that at the end of Luke, where he's growing in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man, is the phraseology there. And so we know that it's important for us to train our children and train ourselves up in education. Well, what about the philosophy? Like, what's the foundation of education? So if the purpose is either to progress society or to apply obedience to the God that I trust in or believe in, what's the philosophy behind how it is that I'm educated? I spoke a little bit ago about this idea of secularism. And the idea behind secularism is that there is no God. Now, whether that's stated explicitly or it's just carried out pragmatically as if God is not there, really a secular education focus is going to emphasize things differently than a religious focus. Here's what I mean. If secularism is the foundation of the education, then probably the things that are going to be pushed in the classroom or in the education environment are those that emphasize my personal freedom, that nobody should be able to impose their ideas and ideology on me against my will, that I should have the freedom to make those decisions on my own. And I want to define that a little bit further. When I talk about freedom in that secular context, I mean freedom without restrictions. And as I define it, I get to carry that out, maybe with the exception of the restriction that it doesn't harm anybody, right? I don't have the freedom to just steal stuff. I don't have the freedom to kill, those sorts of things. But the freedom to decide what I want to do with my life, that's very prominent in education, that is apart from God. Maybe some other things that are prominent there are the ideas of progressivism or subjective morality. I get to define what's right and wrong for me. You may hear people talk about this is your truth, and you approach your truth, and I can approach my truth. And if we have different truths, let's just agree to disagree and go about our day. And it's kind of important for us to understand where my kid is getting education from. Is that the philosophy? And is that the best way for them to learn about the world around them and how to interact with it? One of my all-time favorite shows, I can't even say this is the number one show for me. Now, fair warning, it is a mature show. It's The Wire. And what I love about The Wire is it takes a look at these societal institutions that are meant to save us, and shows just how flawed that is. In season 1 of the show, you see really the police force and its flaws. And season 2 feels kind of dated, the shipping industry. But season 3 is the government, and season 4 is the schools, the education system. And you really see like how corrupt it can be. And you can see how personal individual ideologies married to political agendas make it so that education isn't always pure and innocent, that there's motivations behind that from people who have absolutely nothing to do with our kids, that are maybe driving ideas or trying to accomplish goals that aren't necessarily best for kids and for family. And so to hope in an institution like that to solve world problems or be the basis for why we should be educated, probably faulty, right? Because it's not an objective lens. Well, secondly, that not only is there the secular approach, but secondly, there is the religious approach. There are lots of religious schools. There are Mormon schools, there are Islamic schools, there are Jewish schools, there's Christian schools that you can go to, and each of these institutions are going to teach morality according to the belief system that they're coming from. And so oftentimes the philosophy of education here is abiding by the morality that is consistent with my faith. And I think there's also a third option. So I mentioned Christian in there in the second one, but really I believe that there's kind of a third option in Christianity, and it's that of the gospel. And what I mean by that of the gospel in terms of education is the understanding that Jesus Christ is God in the flesh. He's accomplished all that I need and ever could need in order to live eternally, be in his presence, and be forgiven of my sins, to establish a world of perfection that's free of the inconsistencies and inefficiencies and inadequacies of the world that we have now. But rather, Jesus has accomplished that himself. And so therefore, my education serves two purposes. It's worship and it's mission. Here's what I mean. So education from the gospel perspective, the good news that Jesus already did everything for me, and I just need to trust in him. The idea of education from that perspective is first worship. So I'm not learning stuff to save myself or save the world. I don't have the ability, and we can't possibly know enough to do that. There's always some wrinkle of evil that gets thrown into the mix that forces us to adjust, and society progresses from there. What I mean is, if Jesus has already accomplished it for me, then what I'm learning through the educational process is the way God intended the world to be. I'm learning about math because God made a logical and ordered world. I'm learning about science because I've got a powerful and wise God who made things with such intricate detail. I'm learning about the arts because our God is a God of beauty and creativity. He created the world in 6 days, and he did it with such amazing variety that as I learn those things, I express my creativity in reflection of what God has given to me. And then it's mission as well. So education is an opportunity for me to learn more about God and my place before him, and how to bring that message of goodness and hope to a world that doesn't know him or doesn't have him. And that's a great purpose for education. Of course, I'm biased as a pastor, but that's what I see it as. And so given those options of a secular society devoid of God and trying to progress the world to seemingly perfection, right? The more we learn, the more technology we have, the less faults that we have. That's kind of the idea behind AI right now, right? If I have this artificial intelligence, it can clean up mistakes and the inadequacies that I have as a human being and march us more closer to perfection and this greater level of productivity. I can approach education in that second way, where it's just me trying to obey my God and his morality and hope that he sees that and welcomes me into his presence. Or the third one, the gospel, which again is approaching education from a standpoint of worship and then of mission. I learn more about the world that God has created, and he makes me a partner with him to bring that message of hope to the world. So the prominent options that exist are, of course, public school, private school, and homeschool. Which of the three should I choose for my kids? I hope you know I'm not going to answer that directly, but I do want to explore some of those options and be able to weigh in on what we can be thinking about as we make those decisions. Number one, the basis of education, and really any institution, is really an extension of the family. Here's what I mean. I believe the world was created with Adam and Eve at the start. They were given the responsibility to educate their children, Cain and Abel, and as the family expanded from there. Now, as the world grows bigger and bigger and bigger, it becomes less of a pragmatic solution for each individual family to care for the education of one another, because sin has crept in and families are broken apart, and there are those that are orphaned and parents that aren't doing the job, and so on and so forth. And so now you have institutions emerge like government to ensure the safety of citizens, and government sponsored, funded, proposed education to ensure that everyone gets educated. To state that a little bit more clearly, because we have where parents may not educate children the way they should or have a desire to do that, there exists the government to ensure that society is progressing in that way. And that can be good and that can be bad, right? We've got a case now where we're in 2023, and sometimes it feels as though government oversteps, right? Trying to educate kids in certain ways that parents haven't approved, and trying to silence certain things that maybe parents want spoken about more freely. And so you have debates on school choice and where tax dollars should go. And I don't want to get into all of that, but undergirding all of that is the idea that education is first and foremost a family responsibility. So public school, that's where I came from. Born and bred, proud representative of public school. Public school, a positive, is the opportunity to directly bless and be a representative of and a participant in my community. The vast majority of kids in the United States of America attend public and charter schools. It's free education, so this isn't something that I'm paying out of pocket aside from tax dollars for, and so that this is where most people go. And so I can interact with a diversity of people from varying economic backgrounds, varying cultural backgrounds, and learn deeply about the world around me just through experience. Now, a con may be, of course, because it's public education funded by the government is separated from the church, right? It's not a religious institution, at least on face level, it's not. And so the government provides free education, but it doesn't do so from a neutral perspective. Government is always going to offer education based on its own ideology. And if we live in a secular society, that's the kind of education that's going to be delivered. And so knowing that you can send your kids to a public school, just know that as that's happening, they're probably going to be taught that freedom is one of the highest ideologies that they can have, that they need to be a free person, not have ideas imposed on them by the outside. That may cause your child to turn a disdainful look at the church, a disdainful look at religious institutions in general, as seeing them as maybe being controlling and lacking freedom. That's a possible downside of public education. Next, you got private schools. Private schools, the downside is the cost, right? They're expensive, although here in Florida, there's been laws passed to where some of the public funding can be applied to private education. You can research that. But the idea behind a private school is that maybe it offers smaller class sizes. It's got a different approach to a philosophy of education. You have maybe secular private schools, you have religious private schools. The point is you really get to choose what you desire, and you can pay to have your child educated in the way that you desire for the most part. It's nice to have that option. My kids go to private school mostly because my wife works at a private school, and so we get to send them for free. And then lastly, you have homeschool education, with the obvious benefit of you as the parent directly impacting the educational development of your children. Now, the downside, I think, of both homeschool and private school, let's speak about private school first. The downside potentially could be the lack of diversity, right? Lack of diversity in thought from the faculty, the staff, the administration. Lack of diversity in representation from the school because it's so expensive. It could be just a certain economic tax bracket is able to be admitted into that environment. And so you may lack the cultural competency to understand what other people's lives are like in a private school setting. And homeschool, that's multiplied even more if you're not intentional about interacting with other people and families and students. Not to mention the fact that you're already kind of secluded from those who are in public and private schools. That could be a detriment to that as well. So with all of those things considered, public, private, homeschool, which is the best one? I got no idea. You've got to choose what is best for you and your family. But as I said in the beginning of the video, never do anything without purpose or intention. If you're sending your kids to public school, know that they're going to get a secular education, and make sure that you on the back end have trained them up in such a way to be able to understand morality as you've taught it. objective morality as you see fit, making sure that they see themselves and their place in this world according to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And kids that are well equipped for that, man, they can go into a public school environment and do mission and worship work better than anybody. But if you absolve yourself of that responsibility, don't educate at home, leave it up to the schools alone, and don't be surprised when your kids grow up and have morals that differ from yours and turn out to be the kind of people that mirror the world as opposed to what you would desire them to be. I think the same is true of private school. Don't pay money to send them to an institution and just trust the institution to do all the work. Sometimes private institutions produce religious zealots, right? Sometimes they teach things in such a way that forces people to be closed off from society and living in a box and not totally competent with how the world works. They can be bigoted, they can be paternalistic, they can be arrogant, they can get into altruism for a way of making themselves feel better, but it's condescension towards the people that they're being kind to. Those are all possible downfalls. And so make sure you're educating your children on love and diversity, hospitality, generosity, inclusivity. Those are important factors that reflect the gospel as well. And then lastly, the homeschool option as well. That can be difficult because in a society like the United States of America, more often than not, both parents got to go to work. And so it's hard to be able to afford to keep your child at home, be intentional about involving them in social interaction with a diverse group of people, not just in a bubble with the kinds of people that you like, but also other kinds of people, because eventually they're going to get older and going to want to explore outside of the umbrella and safety of your leadership and your guidance. And so I'll close by saying education is so important. God's given us the gift of our children. He's given us the gift of information. I think this applies with you, even picking your own colleges and universities and grad schools. What kind of education am I seeking to accomplish? What am I wanting to become? What are the goals that I want to achieve? And if those aren't directed towards the worship of Jesus Christ and participating in his mission, I fear you may get lost in the shuffle. And so look to Jesus, as he's already accomplished what we need to be saved. Education can't save anybody. And rather, this is an opportunity to learn more about him, the world that he's created, and participating in the mission to tell people about this good kingdom that he has brought to this world. That's a long talk about education, probably not comprehensive enough, but I hope it gives you some thoughtful insight on how to approach it for your kids and for yourself. This will be the last video according to the first commandment, and so jump in with us for the next one, episode 7. We will start to explore some of the implications of the second commandment. Again, thanks for watching the video. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Even if you didn't enjoy it, you watched the whole thing, just hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel and send it to somebody you think it may be helpful. I'll see you next time.